One of the marks of a good captain of an army, a good general of an army, is his ability to win. Okay? If you always go into battle and if you're always losing, that ain't good, is it? And whoever's leading those battles will eventually get called to the carpet, probably dismissed from his position. Gideon is referred to as a mighty man of valor, a mighty man of war, a mighty man of victory. Okay? And who has he now been victorious over? Yes, the Midianites, who have had Israel in captivity for 7 years. And they are now free, are they not? He has captured 2 princes and had them killed. Right? 2 of the predominant princes of Israel. He has captured the 2 kings of the Midianites. And he has overthrown the entirety of the host, has he not? Total victory is his. Israel is now free from Midianite oppression. Folks, sometime today, tomorrow, sometime, go back and read the 6th chapter of Judges, those opening verses, okay? Because with victory, Gideon has now reversed many of the afflictions that the Midianites had placed upon them. And I listed 4 of them. They would now have increase of their land once again. Remember, the Midianites would come in, they get everything planted, and just as soon as they got everything planted and ready to go, here comes the Midianites and just destroy everything. If anything ever did produce, they would immediately come in, steal everything, take everything, destroy everything. And so there was just very little as far as food and nourishment were concerned. They would have flocks and herds. They would have prosperity. They would no longer have to hide any of their activities from the Midianites. Isn't that what Gideon was doing when he was called by God? Okay, he was trying to do the best he could do to provide some food for his family, and he was doing it in hiding, scared of the enemy. And so now there no longer has to be any of this fear. Now the nation once again can become a powerful, prosperous nation. Isn't that a wonderful thing? At least it ought to be. But, like we said last week, before Gideon could go home, he had to take care of some unfinished business, didn't he? Wow. And we read about it in Judges 8. We've entitled this section, The Punishment of Succoth and Penuel. The Punishment of Succoth and Penuel. You want to know just a big, broad lesson that we can get, and it's good for parents? Okay? Parents, are you listening? If you threaten punishment on your kid, guess what? Follow through. Do it. Okay? I'm going to whoop you. And then guess what? There ain't no whooping. You know? Kid talks himself out of it, gets mom and dad to laugh, whatever it is. And, you know, unbelievable. Follow through with that discipline. Notice the return from battle. And Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from battle before the sun was up. That's if you have the King James Version. Okay, before the sun was up. Let me ask you something. Does that sound like the battle was quick and decisive? It does. It sounds as if he immediately left those 2 cities of Succoth and Penuel, went into battle, and before the sun was up the following day, victory was his. And it very well may be the case. We do know this. We do know that he fought against the remaining 12,000 of Midian, don't we? And he overthrew those individuals. And we do know that during the course of that battle, he had captured those 2 kings. So regardless of how long it took, he was victorious in the battle. King James says, before the sun was up. Now notice point B, though. Most don't think that that is an accurate translation of a word that is in the biblical text. It's the word charis, C-H-E-R-E-S. It can refer poetically to the sun, but the New King James translates it differently. It says this, Then Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from battle from the ascent of Hermes. okay, from the Ascent of Hermes. So rather than the battle just taking, a few hours, most individuals say, in order to destroy a 12,000 man army, in order to pursue after kings and overcome them and take them captive, it would have taken more than just a few hours to do that. And they believe that this translation that he was returning, but he was coming a certain way, and they named the way as the Ascent of Hermes, which would have been very near the city of Succoth. Okay. What's interesting though about that is this: we have absolutely no historical documentation of any road referred to as the Ascent of Hermes. So how do you know that? We have no archaeological evidence of it whatsoever. So the reality is we don't know what. We don't know exactly where this road is. Okay, that was there. But he is returning from the battle. But notice the next point. The revealing of Succoth's leaders. First, there is the seizing of a young man. And caught a young man of the men of Succoth, and inquired of him. Met a young man. When you hear the word young man, what comes to your mind? Teenager, okay? 18, 19. Okay, I even go up, you get to be old. Young man, he could be in his 20s, couldn't he? When you look up that little word young man, though, notice it's a boy, an adolescent, possibly even a servant, okay? A young man of Succoth. Most likely he was in his early teens, okay? Just still considered a boy. And so they catch him, and we're not told how, and we're not told where he was caught whatsoever. All we know is that they caught the young man, and what does the text say? They inquired of him. The only way we know what they asked is by the answer that was given. Okay? Take, for instance, in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. The Apostle Paul discusses marriage in great length in 1 Corinthians 7. Okay? He starts the chapter off noting that he was answering questions that had been submitted to him by the Corinthians. The only problem is we don't have the what? We don't have the questions. All we have are the answers, so we have to surmise from the answers what the questions were. And you can do that pretty easily, okay, most of the time. Notice the superiors were revealed to Gideon. And he described unto him the princes of Succoth, and the elders thereof, even 70. Wow. Every town had a group of men who were the administrators. They were the overseers. They would be sort of like a city council today. Okay, we've got a mayor. And the mayor has individuals who work under him. Notice there's two groups that are made mention of by this young man. One group are known as the princes. When you look up that word, I thought it was interesting. It doesn't start with a CZ, but the Hebrew word is sar. Okay, a sar. And notice the definition. A head person, a captain, a chief, a general, a governor, a keeper, a lord, a master, a prince. Brown Driver and Briggs says a chieftain, an official, a captain. These individuals could have had their positions for many different reasons, okay? They could have been elected, possibly. They could have been appointed, okay? They could have been inherited, okay? You just step into the position. It's kind of a family type thing. Or it could have been that it's because of your place of prominence in the community. Who are some of the big dogs in communities? Huh? Rich people. Yes, rich people. Doctors, lawyers, sometimes your religious leaders, okay, that are pretty high up in society. So any one of those could have been a part of this group of individuals who are referred to as princes, okay? And then he gives another group of individuals, another classification, and they are the what? The elders. Strong says that word simply is defined as old, okay? Old. Now, I have said this several times in the course of lessons. In the Jewish mind, when did a person become old? What's that? No. 60. Yes, 60. Okay? 20 to 40, young man. Okay? 40 to 60, middle-aged man. 60 and over, an old man. When Paul was writing to Philemon, he refers to himself as Paul the aged. Okay? Paul the what? Paul the old man. Okay? Over the age of what? Over the age of 60 when he wrote that particular writing. Brown, Driver, and Briggs just says old, elder, as those having authority. So you've got some old men in the town. Why would you want old men in positions of authority? Okay, been there, done that. Their wisdom, they've had the experiences, right? They've dealt with numerous situations through their life, and so therefore they have maybe a lot more options than would just a young man. Two, older individuals are usually a little bit more, I hate this word, but I'm going to use it, okay? Mellow, okay? I don't like that word, okay? When I was a young preacher, I was a fireball, and one older preacher said, "Oh, when he gets a little older, he'll mellow." And I thought, I hope not. You know, it sounds like you lose your what? You lose your spunk, you lose your fire. You know, who wants to lose that? You know, your enthusiasm. You don't want to mellow, but you do want to mature, don't you? And you do want to be able to exhibit more self-control, right? And hopefully, as you get older, you're able to do all of those things. So, older men were oftentimes included in this group of individuals that were known as the men of the city. Does anybody know of a man in the Bible, very prominent individual, who was one of the men of the city? Not of Succoth, but just a men of the city. Who? I thought somebody said it. Job. Okay, folks, Job was one of the wisest men on the earth. Okay, at the time when all the events in Job came, and he was one of these men of the city. He was one who sat up there in the council, and so a very prominent individual. Now notice they get this young man in, and they ask him, "Who are the what?" Yeah, who are these princes? Who are these leaders? Who are these elders? How do we find them? Right? Well, folks, there was a lot of descriptions he could have given, couldn't he? He could have told them their names. Maybe. Right? If we went around and we asked everybody to list all the names of the city council in Jacksonville right now, our list would probably come up pretty short, wouldn't it? And yet, those people occupy a very prominent position in our city, and yet, who are they? I don't know. Okay? I don't know. So, the names to a young person may not be known. He may know a few, right? He may know some of the real prominent ones, some of the ones who really get out and shake hands, some of the ones who are in the news, some of the ones who, you hear about on the streets a lot. But as far as all of the names, boy, that'd be luck, wouldn't he? I guess he could have just pulled out his iPad and showed it to them, Yeah, his tablet, yes, something. But notice the next point, maybe the next 2 or 3 points, folks. Their schedules. Think he might have known something about their schedules? How about places where they meet? Okay? That may have been one of the questions, right? Where do your men meet? Well, they meet at this gate, and usually at this time of day. That's where most of them can be found. And he might know that. He might know that from his parents. He might know that from having seen them there. He might know that from having actually been there on a time or two and seen all of them, right? He might know when they're going to hold the most important meetings, okay? Every day at noon, this is the most important meeting, and all of them try to be there, or at this restaurant, or at wherever. So there may have been a lot of ways to identify these individuals. He may have pointed out a few of their places of residence, mightn't he? Occasionally, you kind of know where somebody lives, don't you? Let's see. Anybody know where the mayor lives here in town? Rodney does. Anything happened to the mayor's house, now we know who to arrest. You see, but occasionally we'll know where a prominent individual lives in town, but not very often. Maybe he can describe them by their clothing, couldn't he? Okay. If you see a man dressed in this garb, you know he's a prince. If you see him dressed this way, you know he's an elder. And if you see them dressed that way, you know that they're on official business. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways he could have described them, maybe even their physical descriptions. But what gets me is how many of them there are. Okay? 70 and what? 17. How many is that? Folks, that's 77 people. That's more than's in here right now. You know that? 77 people that Gideon needs to round up, who are men of what? Men of Succoth. Okay? The leaders of Succoth. Why does he need to get every one of them? Because he made a promise. That's why, didn't he? He made a promise to these 77 men. Folks, it was these men who had made the decision to what? Not support him. Okay? And so, if you are in that governing body who makes a decision not to assist, and a threat is made against you for not assisting, then get you. You've got to carry out the discipline that's been given. One commentator, and I thought this was interesting, 77, he referred to it as the Sanhedrin of the city. Okay? In the Jewish religion, there was a Sanhedrin Court, was there not? And the Sanhedrin Court was the supreme court of the Jews. Does anybody know how many people made up that court? Huh? It was 72 individuals who made up that court when you threw in the high priest, and oftentimes there would be 2 high priests that would be sitting in that seat of authority. Okay, so a very powerful court. And so now each city has something that resembles the what? The Sanhedrin. Okay, and so he's got to know their names. He finds that out. My next question would be this. What did they do with the young guy? You know, they captured him. I bet he's scared to death, don't you? You know, all of a sudden you get jerked up by the nape of your neck. Come in here, boy. Need to know who the leaders of your city are. Okay, oh, can you imagine? You know, I hope they were a little nicer than that to him, don't you? We never read again what happened to that little guy. Okay, I bet he went to a new city. But notice what happens thirdly. The rendering of Zebah and Zalmunna. And he came unto the men of Succoth. Now that's interesting, isn't it? He didn't have to do what? He didn't have to round them up. The Bible says he came unto the men of Succoth. That kind of helps us understand how this young man described these people, right? They'll be meeting in this location at this time for their meeting, and you can find every one of them right there. Okay? Do we have city council meetings sometime? And they're announced. usually a Tuesday, Thursday night, 7 o'clock, 6:30, whatever it is. Those are announced. And anybody can go, right? And so very well may be that. It may have been, what normally happened in towns is that these men had other jobs, okay, as well. And so they couldn't spend all their time administrating. So what they would do is very early in the morning when the sun rose, they would all meet at the gate. Okay? And so anybody coming for business, anybody leaving town, could immediately take care of any business that was needed and then leave. So it may have been he met them at the very gate of the city. We're not told, though, are we? And he came unto the men of Succoth and said, Behold, Zebah and Zalmunna, with whom ye did upbraid me. Saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in thine hand, that we should give bread unto thy men that are weary? I want you to look at point B. Zebah and Zalmunna. What does he say? Behold. What was it that Succoth has said? What did they ask him? Yeah. You captured those 2 kings yet? Nope. No bread for you. Now he walks right back in, and guess what? Hey guys, bring them in. Behold, Zebah and Zalmunna. Wow. Unbelievable. The evidence that they had been captured could not be what? Couldn't be denied. Here they are. They're standing right before you. They're still alive. But I find it interesting. He didn't decapitate them, did he? He brought them alive before these individuals. Remember this. Notice this next point right here because it's important. Folks, the men of Succoth not only denied Gideon, and this is why this is so serious, okay? They had also denied who? The God of Israel. Okay? When they refused to help Gideon, who had been promised by God that he would defeat the Midianites, they not only denied Gideon, they denied help to the Almighty God. That's a serious offense, isn't it? A serious offense. Notice point 4. One wonders how the men of Succoth were feeling as they looked upon these 2 subdued kings. What do you think the men of Succoth thought when they refused to give bread to Gideon and his men? No, I said, what? Yeah. They'll never catch these 2 kings. These 2 kings will make it back to Midian. They will be well protected. And eventually they will get their kingdom reorganized. They'll get their army reorganized. And guess what? Anyone who has been a part of this uprising will be killed. And we are not going to be a part of that. And now all of a sudden, the tables are turned, aren't they? And now they bring in Zebah and Zalmunna, and the Bible doesn't tell us, does it? How the men of Succoth felt when they looked on those 2 kings. But folks, they had to have felt something, didn't they? And I wrote down just a few words. They felt anger. Maybe. Anger at who? Maybe anger at themselves. You know it? Maybe anger at some of the group that had convinced them not to support Gideon. Right? Maybe anger toward Zebah and Zalmunna for not having won this battle. Who knows? How about the next one? Fear. That's what I would have felt. You know what? Fear. Because you see, attached to the refusal was a promise by Gideon that I will be what? I'll be back. Okay? I'll be back, and he was. How about jealousy? How about regret? Folks, there's a lot of times we make decisions, and those decisions come back to haunt us, don't they? And we feel a lot of negative feelings about the decisions that we make. Okay? the retribution upon the men of Succoth. And he took the elders of the city and thorns of the wilderness and briars. And with them he taught the men of the city. Wow. Ooh-wee. Gideon did not renege on his promise to the men of Succoth. This is what he had told them. Therefore, when the Lord hath delivered Zebah and Zalmunna into mine hand, then I will tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. Judges 8, verse 7. Can you imagine? Now, again, we are not told exactly how that instrument was prepared that he used in order to do this. But folks, 77 men had their flesh ripped and torn by what? By the thorns and briars of the wilderness. And we're not talking about, little thorns. We're talking about big thorns, big briars. They're strong, okay? And they can rip the flesh. I find it interesting that he didn't do what to them? He didn't kill them, did he? But he, huh? Yeah, Sean said, you don't learn if you're dead. How true that is. Notice their text says that he taught the men of the city. He taught the men of the city. I thought that was interesting. Physical discipline is one means of what? Teaching. We've forgotten that, haven't we? Individuals argue today that nobody learns anything by physical discipline. And boy, we just let people just go do what they want to do, don't they? It's crazy. What I find is nobody learns anything by a simple slap on the hand. A lot of kids don't learn much in time out. Okay? Just unbelievable. Proverbs 10:13. A rod is for the back of him that is void of what? Understanding. In other words, the rod will give him what? Understanding. The rod teaches, folks. The rod and reproof give what? Wisdom. That's in Proverbs chapter 29, verse 15. The rod and reproof give what? Wisdom. The rod's a what? The rod's a teacher. How about this next one? No chastening for the present seemed to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterward it yieldeth the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby. Folks, discipline is a what? Is a teacher. And kids need to be taught. Adults need to be taught. Criminals need to be taught. Okay? The Bible teaches it. And that it teaches it right here, doesn't it? The men of the city of Succoth were what? Taught by Gideon. Taught what? Don't rebel against God again. Don't rebel against God's deliverers again. You stand in here with us as God's people and you help us fight. When righteous discipline is issued, the ones meting out the discipline are not the evil ones, folks. The ones who are evil are the ones who have violated the law and caused the discipline to rain down upon them. When Jesus went into the temple, wherein there were money changers and people selling all kinds of animals, what did Jesus do? He got upset, didn't he? And what did he do? Turned over the tables, drove out the animals, drove out all the people. He was upset, was he not? People would see that today, they go, ooh, bad Jesus. They would. He shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have made such a display. Unbelievable, folks. Jesus wasn't the problem that day. You want to know who was the problem? The Jews that were doing what they were doing in the temple. And the Bible says it, doesn't it? Jesus rebuked the money changers. The text says that they had turned His Father's house into a house of merchandise on the first occasion. On the second occasion, He said they had turned His house into a den of thieves. Point number 5, guys, there was revenge also carried out on Penuel. Remember, he had told them the same thing. What did he tell them he was going to do to them? Cast down their tower. And folks, he did exactly what he said he was going to do. There's the lesson. You threaten discipline, you carry out the discipline. Okay? Don't renege on that. Notice the conclusion. Why is it sometimes that the joy of victory has to be accompanied with the sorrow of discipline? Folks, it's imperative that the children of God learn the importance of involvement and cooperation in the work of God. When everyone labors and does his part, all can take part in victory. No one has to be chastised for stubbornness and for their lack of participation. Folks, when the work of God needs us, you know what? We need to be there, don't we? We need to be there. Thank you, thank you.